raise the most money for underprivileged and handicapped children during Variety Club's Cans for Kids Week.
Headline News, I'm David Goodnow. A show of American might off Lebanon. A 5-ship assault force carrying 1,900 Marines is reportedly headed for the eastern Mediterranean to join 22 other ships steaming south of Cyprus and due west of Israel. The larger task force consists of 2 aircraft carrier battle groups with 180 planes and another Marine contingent. The Reagan administration said the forces are not there for offensive purposes, but the Pentagon is hedging.
They represent prudent stationing of our forces where they would provide the greatest opportunity for the President to exercise whatever options he wished. They're not there as a threat to anyone, certainly not as a threat to anyone who is acting in the civilized way.
Muslim extremist groups say they moved American hostages in Lebanon because of the military buildup and fears of an American attack, and there is speculation Israel may join the battle if the U.S. does strike. Mike Greenspan reports.
With full support from Washington, Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir has reaffirmed Israel's refusal to release Arab prisoners in exchange for the American hostages. With Israel Radio reporting the 6th Fleet steaming towards Lebanon, the U.S. will soon be in position to exercise its military option. But images of Delta Force commandos swooping in to rescue the hostages are probably unrealistic.
That is the most difficult of all military options. It requires excellent intelligence. It requires surprise. It requires the hostages to be located usually in one place, very close to one another.
The U.S. could launch a full-scale strategic operation, but Israel's own experience has shown this option to be costly and counterproductive. A surgical airstrike against bases of the extremist Shiite Muslim Hezbollah organization would be easier to mount.
From Israel's point of view, there is much to be gained as a result of American military action against Hezbollah. What Israel can contribute is good, hard intelligence, perhaps the best that anybody has about what's going on inside Lebanon.
Such information could help the U.S. pinpoint and destroy Hezbollah's growing stockpile of heavy arms, thus weakening the extremist position in Lebanon's internal power struggle. But choosing this or any other military option would almost certainly cost the hostages their lives.
This is the central dilemma of terrorism today. Any leader is personally affected by the lives of the hostages in every hostage situation.
Nonetheless, says Gold, military action, or even the threat of military action, is still America's most effective means of dealing with extremist organizations and their sponsors. Mike Greenspan, CNN, Jerusalem.
The atmosphere in Beirut is described as very tense, with civilians hurrying home before dark and militiamen manning roadblocks and anti-aircraft guns. Students marched through the streets today demanding an end to the kidnappings and hostilities. Meanwhile, Americans are still leaving the torn city for Cyprus, some of them after decades in Beirut. The United States has declared Lebanon off limits to Americans at the end of the month. The U.S. today conducted its first underground nuclear weapons test of the year. Though it only stirred up dust in the Nevada desert, it's expected to stir up a lot more elsewhere. Rob Begleiter reports.
3, 2, 1. 0 time, Area 10.
The tremors from the first U.S. nuclear test of the year are having repercussions as far away as Moscow. The Soviet Union announced it would abandon its own year-and-a-half-long testing moratorium after another U.S. test.
The arms race, which has never slowed down, only now continues to be pushed faster.
On other arms control issues, the administration has insisted it takes 2 to tango.
If arms control is to have any future to it, it must be a future that includes constraints by both sides.
But on nuclear testing, President Reagan believes the U.S. must continue to test nuclear weapons as long as the West relies on those weapons for its defense. Only when the 2 superpowers agree to reduce and eliminate offensive nuclear weapons, the administration says, should the U.S. agree to ban testing. The new U.S. test occurred just as American and Soviet experts in Geneva are winding up a round of negotiations on testing.
We find it important to start negotiations and in the course of those negotiations not to lose sight of the main objective. And the main objective is to achieve a complete ban on nuclear tests.
A Soviet Foreign Ministry spokesman says the U.S. has gone too far and suggests the Kremlin will now resume testing. Moscow's resumption of testing could turn out to help the West to keep track of Soviet compliance with any future test ban. If a group of American scientists is allowed to keep monitoring equipment near a Soviet nuclear test site, as the Soviets say it will, the West could obtain its best technical information ever about a Soviet nuclear explosion.
Better verification could lead to grounds for an agreement on nuclear tests and perhaps eventually to a nuclear test ban. Ralph Beglatter, CNN at the State Department.
65 senators think a 65-mile-an-hour speed limit is a pretty good idea. The Senate passed a highway bill today calling for the increased speed limit on interstates in suburban and rural areas. Meanwhile, the House of Representatives voted overwhelmingly to override President Reagan's veto of a clean water bill, and the House gave itself and other federal officials a raise by failing to reject a pay increase proposal. Lawmakers can repeal the increase by passing another bill tomorrow. Proposed cuts in the federal budget could spell trouble in the war against drugs. John Zarello reports drug enforcement agencies are already calling for more money.
Agreed, Miami calling 423. Roger, we're engaged in boarding at this time.
In the waters off Florida, Coast Guard boats are constantly patrolling, watching for drug smugglers.
The vessel is approximately a 30-foot bay liner, and documentation numbers as follows.
As in this case, not every boat they board is carrying narcotics. The task of keeping an eye on the hundreds of miles of coastline is a 24-hour job. But proposed cuts in the fiscal 1988 federal budget might make the Coast Guard's and every other drug-fighting agency's job a lot harder. The president's budget would cut drug control spending by $900 million. For the Coast Guard, that could mean less money to spend on patrols. And for local drug rehabilitation programs like Village South in Miami, there would be no federal money at all. That could put many such centers out of business. And the people who run them think this is precisely the wrong time for that to happen.
We make ourselves available to treat the individuals that we can, and the individuals that can't get into treatment or are on waiting lists for anywhere up to 2 months, you can only pray for and hope that they're around long enough to make it into a treatment program.
The proposed drug budget cuts go across the board. The Customs Service would lose more than $300 million. Public school anti-drug programs would be cut in half, down to $100 million. The budget will likely go through many changes before it is passed. But here in South Florida, at the front lines of the war on drugs, federal, state, and local agencies are concerned that the president's budget will take away some of their ammunition. John Zarella, CNN, Miami.
Headline News continues.
Hi, I'm Bob Vila. Millions of you have watched my home repair show on TV. If you've been putting off those home repairs